Hi everybody, Sharon here. Welcome back to my garden and welcome to another episode of Sharon's Home and Garden. So I've been asked a couple questions about my irrigation system and if I would talk more about my irrigation system. So that's what we're going to do in this video. Now the company that I chose to work with is called Dripworks. And the reason I chose them is because their name kept coming up when I was watching a bunch of YouTube videos on installing an irrigation system. And the thing I like about them is they have where you can buy kits for certain size gardens. Now this catalog is from 2018. That's when I put in my system, so most of my system is 2 years old. And you can buy kits. I'm trying to find one here. Here. Like garden bed kits. They have different sizes here. And everything that comes with it. This is drip tape for row gardens. Small, medium, large kits. And that was my jumping off point for how I figured out what I wanted to order. So I actually found the drawing that I made when I first was designing this system. And I had to use like my own design because none of the kits seemed to have enough of what I needed. And I figured out where I needed, like here I needed a T, here a 90, a T, a 90, and then, you know, how many I needed. Went through all my beds, took measurements of everything, and then wrote out a list of what I needed. So this list gave me kind of a starting point to jump off, and then I went online and saw how they were actually sold. Like these transfer barbs are sold in 10 pieces. So, you know, when you first start out, you have to figure out how many little transfer barbs you need and how many goof plugs you might need. These are good for when you screw up. There's also some things called a transfer end plug that you put at the end of a line. And then the T's and the couplers and all these different things that I had to buy. And I ended up with extra. So I have extra T's. I have extra, well, these are all T's. The T's must have come in them. I had an extra elbow which I used for this time. They have these things which you put at the end of the mainline tubing. I had purchased some drip line. I don't know if you can see that, but see how it bulges here? There's a hole there. And that is a drip that's every 6 inches. You can do every 12 inches. Then I have just main 1/4 inch tubing. And I had 1/2 inch tubing. Now this is a new pack that I bought this year because I expanded my garden. So that was basically all the moving parts. Once I got all the parts, and I got everything here, I ended up redoing this completely differently because I had discovered the 1/4 inch drip line, and that was completely different than what I was going to do, than doing the emitters on each one. So I did a combination, kind of like a hybrid of using the drip emitters and the drip line. that makes any sense. I hope it does. So let me show you how it ended up. So it all starts here. This is a filter, and this is a regulator here. So these pieces here, I believe I bought in a kit. The filter and then the pressure regulator came in a kit. And I put this here because right there is where my water comes out of my house. And so then I added this. And I used to have a quick release, but I lost it. So I could just click it in there and click it off when I mowed the lawn. And then from there, I went all the way around the garden with that 1/2-inch main line. I ended up going all the way down the garden like this. Came through here and then hit up my raised bed. And then at the end, you've got this, one of those figure 8 things to hold the tube in place so it doesn't leak at the end. And then from there, I punched in, I don't know if you can see that. I punched in and I did drip line in here. I have one on this half of the bed, and then I have one on this half of the bed, and that covers the whole bed. I zigzag it, serpentine it throughout the whole bed. Now let's go back over here. From the main line here, I also went all along here, this side of the bed, and then I had to go up so I could hit these taller beds and down under here, under the gate, and then I went up there, and then I brought that main line all along these buckets here. And then each of these buckets gets a directed drip like this. And that's not ideal for these onions, but onions can kind of live with a little less water. But anything like these tomatoes, each get their own emitter. The flowers, I have 2 or 3 of them in here. I have one that's on my rhubarb. You can see it coming out here for my rhubarb. And then each of these zucchini plants, excuse me, has its own emitter. And I used to have more in here. You can see this is a goof plug, where if you put a hole in, you can just plug it up. So each of these zucchini plants has its own emitter, like that. And then in the beds, I have drip line. So I have 2 of them in these 4x8 beds, because when I originally put this in, I had everything planted in rows. And now for these watermelons and pumpkins, they have both lines will meet, and they spread out and they meet. You can see here, I've got both lines going to these squashes because they need a lot of water. These are left over from last year, there, and there. And I just have them weaving throughout this garden bed. I never did put water in this one. I don't know why, but I just never did. Here again, I had something completely different planted when I set this up. So I just took the drip line and weaved it so that the watermelons in here get a lot of water. I want to show you how easy it is to add on to this system once you've got the groundwork in place. I've got these cabbages here, and when I ran my drip line for the rest of my in-ground garden, you can see the tube here. I ran it all the way and hooked it up to the regular line with a T. And then, let me get out of your light. I took the drip line, popped into the, like this is drip line, it's got emitters every 6 inches. Took that, hooked it in here, and then just ran it. And I did that for each row. Okay, and that's pretty much it. Let me show you how I added to the system. So I've got a plant here. This is 1/2-inch tubing right here. You buy one of these. It's got this thing that pokes a hole into the 1/2-inch tubing. So I've got my 1/4-inch tubing and this little thing called a transfer barb, and I put this in here like that. So it looks like this. And then on the other end, you take one of these little drips, and they have all different kinds. They have sprays, they have like a little fountain, they come out like a little, we call them a bubbler here in Wisconsin, like a little drinking fountain. You can pick whatever you want. I picked a drip one. And you just take this and stick it in here. So it looks like that. And then you take this thing and the tubing. I always have to check to see which side it comes out. That pokes a hole. You stick the transfer into there, and then you just put that, and the nice thing about these is you can direct them right to the roots. So I know that the water, especially with this landscape fabric, the water can tend to pool. If I would put a sprinkler on, it would just pool everywhere because it takes a while for it to soak in. But with these, you can put the drips right on where the root is, and you know that it's getting good irrigation. So it's really that simple. So here it is, all completed. I've just got each one, the little emitter. That should work just fine. So here in southeastern Wisconsin, I'm in like a little dry pocket. It's the storms go north of me and the storms go south of me. and they always tend to miss us. So that's why I ended up installing this drip irrigation system. Also, I work full-time, and sometimes you have to water every other day here because it's just so dry. There's times we're almost getting into our dry time, like between the middle of June and the middle of August. We can go weeks and weeks without any rain. And you know, working a full-time day and then coming home and having to water the garden by hand, or even with a hose or turning a sprinkler on. You know, a sprinkler, there's so much waste of the water, and when you're paying for your water, you think about how much water you're wasting. So this allows me to really control where I put the water. I can pinpoint it. You're not broadcasting it, and on the really, really hot days, it's not evaporating as fast as it would if you were using like an overhead sprinkler system. So for me, that's very important. It's also very important because I go away for a week every year in the summertime. And it's really hard for me to ask my friends, oh, can you water this? And this needs this amount of water, and that needs that amount of water. Whereas here, I can buy a certain emitter that, say, a watermelon needs more water than the herbs do. Because herbs are Mediterranean, they're used to long dry spells, whereas the watermelon needs a lot more water than the herbs. So you can really control with pinpoint accuracy where the water is going in your garden. The thing I love about this system is that you can add on or take away very easily. It's just very user-friendly. And I've never had to call them, but I've heard that their customer service is fantastic. I ended up ordering my 1/2-inch tubing to expand the garden, like in the midst of the COVID crisis, and they had it shipped out the next day. So I have a feeling they're a small company, but they're great to do business. My only complaint about this company is the shipping is really expensive. So if you're going to order something, make sure it's not just 10 goof plugs, because the shipping is terrible. It's kind of right up there with Johnny's seeds, because Johnny's is really expensive too. But everything gets here really quickly. I'm sure it's because they send it priority mail, and that's why I think the minimum shipping is $15. So you gotta make sure whatever you order is worth $15 in shipping. So yeah, that's pretty much it. If I can do it, anybody can do it. Now I run this system 45 minutes every other day in the morning when we're in the midst of a drought, because even though you get very directed drips, you don't get a whole lot of water. Those emitters at the end of the 1/4-inch line, those put out a little more water than the drip line does. And I try to only put those on things that really, really need more water. So we'll see how it does with the tomatoes and the peppers. Fortunately, peppers can withstand a little less water. Tomatoes, it all depends. We'll see. If I start seeing them dripping, I may have to run another line of drip line. Or if I start to see them drooping, I may run another line of drip line, or I'll have to switch over to drip tape, which is a completely different subject, and I don't know anything about that. So that's my whole system. If you like what you saw here, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. And if you're new here, welcome, and I would love for you to be a subscriber, and you can watch my garden grow all year round. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Happy gardening.